Hey, what's up you guys? You're watching Team APS. I'm Paul, and in today's video, I'm going to give you guys 20 decks that you can build for less than $20, with the only stipulations being that these are deck cores, and these also assume that you buy everything at the lowest rarity. So of course you'll have to fill this in with your own staples, but with things like the Megatons and like Dual Devastator, it's really not hard to get staples, so these are just the core essentials of the deck. And this is basically going on TCG player prices. If something ends up being 21 or 22 bucks, it's not the end of the world. All right, let's hop in. Number one is zombies. So thanks to that zombie structure deck from last year, basically every meaningful zombie card has been printed as a common now. Unizombie already was, but now we have Mizuki, Gozuki, Shiranui Solitaire, and even Valor drops only $2 or $3, so it's really easy to get a hold of. You can make the Zombie World deck and work it perfectly fine. You need things like Glow Up Bloom and that sort of stuff, but I mean, that all comes in the structure deck. And so all these cards are like less than $1, sometimes they're just cents. And you can even combine it with Rivalry of the Warlords if you want and make a nice, really strong lockdown deck, or make a dedicated Shiranui build. Either way though, the zombie deck itself is very affordable, so highly recommended. Number two is Crusader. So Crusader has always been known as a very accessible budget OTK style deck. The only Crusader monster that you wouldn't really be able to afford is Mech Knight Crusader Avramax, and he's really not essential to the strategy. In fact, his effect doesn't really work like the rest of the Crusader Link monsters, so I really don't feel like you need him. And everything else is like really cheap. It's even been reprinted in the Gold Shark 10s this year, and even the reprints, which look a lot nicer than the originals, are also still really cheap, and you can still probably get them all for less than 20 bucks. Number three is Samora. So this is a deck that I know a lot of people like laugh at. It's just one of those like throwaway inclusions in something like Rising Rampage, but the Samora deck's actually not all that bad. Because spell and traps are becoming a little bit more prominent in today's game, they actually do something that's pretty important. When your opponent has spells and traps, all your Samora monsters get to summon themselves back out, and they're Wind and Dark Winged Beast, so you get to use all the accommodating support for that. They actually have decent boss monsters, and it's a pretty fun deck to build. It doesn't really require a lot of extras or moving parts. You don't really even need an extra deck. Number four is Crawlers. So this is a pretty easy one. All of these cards are very low rarity, with most of the main deck cards being commons, and the extra decks are only like supers and stuff like that, so it's really not hard to get. The Crawler deck is based on flip effects, so it can be a little bit slow, but when it builds up, it actually makes a really big presence because all the Link monsters give all your Crawlers protections and all the Crawlers float. So it actually works pretty well. Number five is Tenyi. So this is a new worm archetype that I actually really like. Basically, the monsters thrive on you having non-effect monsters in the field to activate their effects. So you can summon them easily from your hand, and they each have graveyard effects that either protect you. Vishuda is actually used in other decks to bounce cards, and they recently got Ashuna, which speeds the strategy up by summoning monsters from your deck. All the cards are rare, so they're all extremely cheap, and even the Link monsters in Synchro are very affordable. Number six is Dream Mirrors, a really cool TCG exclusive archetype that has a light and a dark element. Basically, all the light monsters can run and get the dark versions of themselves, and vice versa, as long as the opposite field spell is in the field. It sounds confusing, but trust me, it's really not all that bad. And all of these cards are really pretty affordable. I think the most expensive card is Morpheus, and he's only about $3. So this is a deck that is really easy to get everything for. It's really fun, and it's got a very unique playstyle that's kind of unlike any other deck. Number seven is Battle Wasps. So this actually came in the last Battles of Legends set, and I recommend it because outside of everything being extremely cheap, it actually reminds me a lot of Blackwing, which I think in the anime there was some connection between these two decks, but either way, the Battle Wasp monsters are basically wind insects that involve battle phase type stuff and also burn effects. They've got several really strong synchro boss monsters, and if you like decks that are cheap but hollow, then it's actually a good pick because these are all ultras. So next is Fortune Ladies. Fortune Ladies are actually an old archetype that recently got new support in Rising Rampage. They got a new synchro and a couple of new monsters. And basically the Fortune Ladies are about the passage of time. It reminds you of something like maybe FAs or whatever. They want to increase their levels to get more effects, and they also focus on holding your opponent off for a turn or two. They have a counter trap, for instance, and a field spell that can do that. And basically whenever they increase their levels, they hold your opponent back, and it's really easy to get all the cards. Synchro monsters actually got a really strong once per turn banishing and revival effect. So yeah, it's fun. You might as well give it a try. Next is Prank Kids. So this is actually a pretty strong one because it's managed to do pretty well in the YCS scene, which can't be said about every single budget deck on this list, of course. But Prank Kids are really cool. They have the ability to float whenever you use them as fusion or link material, so it's really easy to keep monsters in the field. They have a burn aspect and a life point gain aspect, so that's important if you're going into time. They can nuke the opponent's board very easily. All their link and fusion monsters can just tribute themselves off and like blow up the opponent's board, which is cool. The only card is Prankid's Place, which costs a few dollars more than everything else in the deck, but you should still be able to get 3 copies of it if you're very frugal. Next is Gravekeepers. So Gravekeepers recently got support just at the end of last year in Soul Fusion. They've got things like Headman. They recently got Royal Tribute back to 3, which is really incredible for them. And Necro Rally's always been kind of the titular anti-meta card. The weird thing when I was looking this deck up actually is that the most expensive card in the deck is Gravekeeper's Commandant, the card that searches Necro Valley. It's actually like $3 or $4, so you might have to stretch your budget just a little bit further if you want to get like 3 copies of it. But other than that, I mean, this deck is very, very affordable. Everything's been printed multiple times in common and like rare rarities, so pretty easy to get. Next is Shino Birds, the Ritual Spirit Wind hybrid archetype thing. So the ritual aspect basically involves these like level 8 ritual monsters that you summon out, and then they bounce back to the hand. But when they bounce back to the hand, they give you tokens that you can use to summon them on your next turn. And of course, they work with all of your usual spirit support cards. So that actually can help even more if you already have spirit cards like Nikitama and Aratama. Next is Subterras. So before now, this would not have been on the list because of the Hidden City, but thanks to its reprint and Fist of the Gadgets, pretty much anybody can build this deck. Now, if you're like me, you might want to build it with the Behemoths, which I think is a really fun, more like casual, but fun way to play the deck. But even if not, there's always just Subterra Guru, who's been printed twice now and searches out everything in the deck. So you actually only need like 1 or 2 different Behemoths if you want to run them. And things like Fiendess, very easy to get. Again, thanks to Hidden City's reprint, anybody can play this deck, and it's very unique. It's got flip effects and stuff, so that's always fun. Next deck's Preta Plants. So these are probably more commonly known as like the fusion monsters that you summon off of Super Poly, but little do people know, the Preta Plant deck actually functions just fine on its own. It actually uses several different fusion spell cards. Thanks to Opher Scorpio and Darling Cobra, you can search whatever fusion cards you want. That's instant fusion, that's Super Poly, whatever. And they've got some of the best boss monsters in the game. Actually being able to summon like Starving Venom and being able to summon Trifeoverdum like turn over turn over turn is extremely good. And they technically have a new Link monster coming out, so maybe investing in them now wouldn't be the worst idea, you know? Next deck is Pacifist, kind of an old favorite of mine. It's a normal monster deck, so that's kind of pleasing for a lot of people who don't care for loads and loads of monster effects. They've got a field spell that generates tokens for you anytime that you summon out a normal monster. And the tokens work well with their equipped spells, which let you summon out your big dragon, that is the Phantasm Spiral Dragon, straight from your deck. They also have traps they can use from their hand as literal hand traps. Next is Lunalights. So Lunalights are very popular for being used in Orcus, but as a standalone deck, they work really well. And unlike most sort of side engines, they actually are very cheap. Even Lunalight Tiger, the most important aspect of the Orcus deck, is actually only like 50 cents on TCG Player right now. Obviously that might fluctuate a bit, but the deck is very easy to get. All the cards have been like printed twice now. They have a very great ability to float and continue to get more monsters out. I think the only expensive card is actually Serenade Dance, which is their trap, and it's not even necessary to the strategy, but if you can get your hands on 1 or 2 copies, that also helps too. Next is Paleozoics. So this one is cheap, but it gets a little bit complicated. The Paleozoic monsters, of course, as you know, summon themselves from the graveyard after you've used a normal trap card. But the thing is, you will want to get a copy of something like Totally Awesome to make the most use of these cards. And he does cost around 10 to 12 bucks. So if you can get your hands on one, that'd be great. I think you could probably do it for just around 20 bucks. This is one of those ones where you might go a little bit over budget, but it's definitely worth it because Totally Awesome is easily the best boss monster. Next is Trickstars. So Trickstars are in a really bad spot, mostly because of light stage being limited to 1, although I suspect that'll come off the ban list pretty soon. Other than that though, Trickstars do still function just fine. They still have Candina, they still have Lycris, they still have Reincarnation, cards that are all very strong, Candina being the Stratos, Lycris being very easy to summon and chain, and of course, Reincarnation getting rid of your opponent's hand, giving them a new one, or if you use it with Droll and Lockbird, just getting rid of it entirely. It's a fun deck, and you can actually use some of the lesser known Trickstar cards. Korobane and stuff is also really good. I say give it a try, and then when Light Stage comes back, you'll be all ready. Next deck is Trap Tricks. So Trap Tricks are a deck that they search the trap hole cards. I think that's always been a really cool aspect of them. They recently got Trap Trick Sarah in the last Battles of Legend pack, and that really brings the deck to life by letting you search out your trap holes and your trap trick monsters straight from the deck, and it's a Link 1 monster, so it's very low commitment. This adds a lot of recursion and consistency to a very fun and pretty unique deck, so give it a shot. Then there's Element Sabers. So Element Sabers are these monsters that can actually change their attributes when they're in the graveyard. And what I like about them is that they've got a really strong field spell. It kind of reminds me of Spiral Resort. It just lets you like search your Element Saber cards, and it also lets you send Element Sabers from the deck to the grave to activate their effects instead of from the hand to the grave like they normally are, which helps a lot in card advantage. They're supposed to use the Elemental Lord monsters as their bosses, but actually you can use things like Dark Armed Dragon, things like BLS, and even things like Chaos Dragon Levianeer, which completely breaks the budget, but you know, you can use different boss monsters that just require certain attributes of monsters to be in your graveyard, so you can get kind of creative with this one. And finally, we've got Yosenju. So Yosenju recently got support in Rising Rampage. It's a really fun deck because it basically just involves monsters that sort of function like spirit monsters. They bounce back to your hand at the end of the turn when they've been normal summoned, and they can also bounce your opponent's cards. And basically that's what their effects sort of work off of. You can use it with things like Tinky because they're all beast warriors. They have a pendulum aspect to them as well that's kind of been emphasized more in recent support. And it kind of can just play as an anti-meta strategy, making good use of cards like Card of Demise, for instance, or even like Drowning Mirror Force if you want. And those are 20 Yu-Gi-Oh decks that you can build for $20 or less. Give or take, obviously, like I said, if you go a little bit over budget, it's fine, and this will still require you to have some basic staples. But like I said, staples are not terribly difficult to get these days, and if you can just combine those two things, you can have a very working Yu-Gi-Oh deck for not a lot of money. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, and of course subscribe for more Yu-Gi-Oh! We've got plenty of fun stuff coming up, and so yeah, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Pass turn.